Hello, I'm Robert Scoble, and you're watching Work Fast TV, which is about how the internet is changing work. This show is supported through the generous support of SAP. SAP provides software that helps both large and small businesses manage their business, lower costs, and bring more services to their business relationship partners. Thank you to SAP for supporting social media and Work Fast TV. It's interesting, I used to work at NEC, and I used to use SAP to manage our small groups businesses, so I really appreciate what you do for us. My guest today is David Allen, author of Getting Things Done and Ready for Anything, two very popular productivity books and methodologies. David is the founder and president of the David Allen Company, a management, consulting, coaching, and training company, and a whole lot more. He's the guy who was just talking to me about productivity porn off camera. Welcome, David. This is a real pleasure to have you.
Delighted to be here, Robert. Thanks.
For those two people out there who haven't heard of you, actually Jim Lauterbach, the CEO of Revision 3, was just here and said, I don't really know what David's all about. You know, tell me, what are you about? What is the Getting Things Done system? The
Actually,
top three things.
Well, it was really the result of my spending a lot of years trying to figure out what it is that we do that works and what are the underlying principles of that. Because if you understand the principles of what it is that we do that works to get things done easier and better, you can work it better and you can get more stuff done. So believe it or not, there are some best practices like keep everything out of your head, make good executive decisions about what things are that are on your mind and what they mean to you and what you're going to do with them, and then park those results in some external kinds of system so that your brain gets to relax as a core processor, as opposed to trying to sit there and spin, you know, all of those commitments and all those agreements. So it's really a best practice about how do you manage and keep track of and clarify all the things we're committed to do, so it's a little easier, actually a lot easier, to then manage that huge inventory and renegotiate with yourself against the madness and speed of change and information and all that stuff, you know, that we're all dealing with these days.
Now, you discovered this system by working with executives, right?
Well, I first of all, working with myself. I mean, I am a major student. I fall off the wagon regularly. I'm out of control.
You do too, huh?
Absolutely. That's why I do this. Come on.
That's why I have you on my show, to remind me how to get back on the wagon.
But don't tell anybody. I am not a highly motivated, passion-oriented, high performer. I sleep as long as I can. I don't get up and work on strategic things. So I'm actually, in a way, I mean, that's a little bit of a hyperbole, but the truth is, I like to just say, how do I get from here to there easier? So I've been focused on process really all my life. I didn't really have good words for that in my early years, but I thought everybody sort of thought that way, but I'm just institutionalized laziness. You know, I wake up thinking, how much easier can I get from here to there? And I'm constantly thinking about sort of improving process. You know, one day I discovered they actually pay people to do stuff like that, you know, and I became a consultant. But the truth is, I've always been into that. And then once I began to accumulate and discover some of these best practices that we all can do, we all sort of do them intuitively, but most people don't do them as consciously as they could. And that if you actually started to do that, it makes a huge difference for people. And executives and high-performing people were some of the most hungriest for this kind of improvement.
I can just imagine an executive calls you up on the phone and says, you know, my life isn't working. My kids, my wife are about to leave me. You know, I'm not getting done what I need to get done at work. You know, I'm not performing well there, or the business isn't doing what I want to do. Is that sort of the conversation that you sometimes have with an executive?
Interestingly, no. That would be the more rare side of it.
Really?
Maybe at much deeper levels there may be that kind of insecurity going on. But for the most part, it was interesting to me. The people who need my stuff the least are the people who are the most interested in it. In other words, it's already the most productive people who are the most open and hungry for things that improve that. Yeah. And if you think about it, it's like, well, who's most interested in being faster on the planet? And it's already the fastest people in the world. Formula racing. I mean, they spend how much time basically eliminating drag on the system. And it turns out that Getting Things Done, the GTD methodology, that's what it does. It eliminates drag on the system, but if you're not moving, or you're not interested in getting more, better, sooner, faster, easier, then getting rid of drag is a drag, because you're going to have to do some new behaviors. And so my stuff requires a change in behavior set. So it is already the high performers that are, interestingly, who are the people who call us.
And Matt Rizzo was on the show last week, and he said, I think only 20% of the people can actually use your system. Do you have a sense of that? You sort of articulated that there's a set that really takes to your system well, but other people struggle with it.
Well,
I know I struggle with
if
it
you
daily.
say struggle, well, struggle. And here's an example. Let me give you a real specific kind of thing. I'll bet virtually everybody watching us right now at some point has felt overwhelmed, confused, too much stuff, and you sat down and made a list and you felt a little bit better. Well, if you'd actually reverse engineered that and figured out why that works, and by the way, that works all the time. I don't care who you are.
Work?
Well, all you're doing is you're clarifying agreements with yourself, making them conscious so that you can then renegotiate that agreement. When you keep those things internal, the part of you that seems to be hanging on to that has no sense of past or future. So it's then constantly thinking, I should be, I need to be. And this 24/7 buzz is going on internally, but it's not conscious. You've got a commitment, you know you've got stuff you need to do, but you just can't think of it consciously. You just know you've got the pressure. So you relieve that pressure by being able to externalize that out of your head, create essentially an extended mind where those things are captured in an externalized system. And I just figured that out. I figured out why that works. And if you actually figured out why that works, you'd never keep anything in your head the rest of your life, at least any commitment. And if you say, why do people not stick with it? It's called, that's a huge habit to change. You just have to decide how important it is to you to feel good all the time.
Well, I'm trying to make two changes right now. One, my head is reminding me I have an expense report due while you're talking.
Want a note? You can write it down.
No, I've written it down. It's in my task list.
Okay.
My boss has been calling me. I hate it, so I put it off, right? And how do we readjust that? How do we make ourselves do what's really important to do?
Now, if I had the answer to that really worked, like you could drink this and you would absolutely get you'd want to do your expense report, and I couldn't hold you back, I wouldn't be sitting here. I would have sold that secret sauce and have $6 gazillion and be off somewhere else.
So when you meet one of these Formula One guys that are really productive, what do you do to tune them up, to get them even further?
Well, essentially, there's a 5-stage process about how you really implement the workflow side of this game. And, it's not one thing. There are actually 2 things that people need to manage in terms of themselves, and it could be about their enterprise or themselves personally, and that's control and perspective. The only time you ever think you need to improve anything is when either you're feeling out of control or you're feeling like I don't have the right focus or perspective. If you're on, I'm looking at what I need to and I'm in control, you're on. There's there's no time management issue, there's no productivity issue, there's no stress issue. Yeah. You're just there. It's only when I'm feeling, oh, wait a minute, now I've got more stuff than I know what I'm doing, I'm not sure how I'm focused, and you can start out in control and nice perspective and in 20 minutes be out of control and have lost your focus because of 3 great phone calls you just had. Yeah. So it's not about your personality, it's about where am I situationally. So in order to manage the control aspect of this, which I think is the primary one we need to deal with first. If you're out of control, don't worry about your focus. In other words, if your ship is sinking, don't worry about where it's pointed. Yeah. You need to patch up the cracks first. Well, that whole idea of patching up the cracks and getting control is actually 5 stages. I'm sure you've said, look, I need to get organized and get focused. Yeah. But to get organized, really a better term for that is I need to get things under control, yes. And organize is only one piece of that. Yeah. There are actually 5 stages. The first thing you have to do is you have to collect and capture the stuff that's pulling on your psyche. Yes. There's a lot of cruise control stuff, even important things that you don't need to capture because they're on cruise control. It's the stuff that's on your mind. Why is it on your mind? There's a reason. So we want to be able to capture that. So first of all, there's just the process. I sit down with, if you're Mr. Executive or Mr. Whoever, we've done this with 10-year-old kids as well. We say, well, gee, what's on your mind? Let's grab that. Let's get that inventory. And that's a lot bigger inventory than most people realize. Because what we're doing is capturing, oh, I would, could, should, I might want to, oh, I need to, oh, that's right, I gotta. We get all that. So we essentially throw all that in a big pile or put it in your inbox, and then stage 2 is to make sure you clarify what all that means. And this is where you bring executive operational decision making down to earth. You pick up that piece of paper and go, okay, wait a minute, why is this here? What commitment does this represent that I need to keep track of? What's the next action step I need to take to move this forward?
The next action, that's the secret to your system, right?
That's one of the zeros and ones if you really were to reduce it down. It's really outcome and action, which are the 2 consulting questions. What do you want to be and how do you allocate resources to make it happen? But on a micro level for you and me, something is around that has meaning to me. I need to decide what exactly is the commitment that that represents? Is there some project about that I need to now keep track of? And how do I allocate a resource to start moving toward getting closure on that? So yes, next action is a real key question for stage 2. Let me decide what this means and what I'm going to do about it. Stage 3 is once I determine that, if I don't finish the action right now, I need to keep track of that, because now I got a commitment to make that call, to write that email, to buy that stuff at the hardware store. Where do I park those so that doesn't crawl back up into my psyche again and start, screwing up this core processor? How do I store that in some appropriate place that I trust, so that my extended mind is managing those kinds of externalized relationships, not in here?
Yeah.
So free me up so that I can then make good intuitive choices. So first I collect, then I clarify, then I organize the results of that thinking. Stage 4 is then building a good review and reflection process. See, a lot of people fell off the wagon with GTD because they didn't do the weekly review.
No.
So, right? You can get all that stuff out of your head.
I'll admit, I don't
make
do
all those decisions. You create fabulous lists, and if you don't look at those suckers as often as you need to keep them current with the new stuff coming at you all the time, and keep that inventory, really in front of you, the stuff crawls back up in your head. You say, my head's my system anyway. Managing a system, that's cool on a Saturday when it's raining, but in the real world, that's more work than it's worth, and that's why people don't do my stuff, is because they have all of those little but very critical behavior sets that you've got to change if what you're going to really do is buy into this idea that in your head is the worst place to keep track of any of this stuff. Your head's designed for making intuitive choices about stuff, not for remembering and reminding. And that is a huge, huge change for most people.
What about the internet caused this to happen right now? Because you're a worldwide phenomenon. I mean, on Twitter right now, there's people talking about you and having a great time. But
well, actually, GTD is now in 30 languages. I just found out. So
wow.
The French finally did it. So even then. So it is, I think it's a global phenomenon for several reasons. But you're right, one of them is the internet. Essentially, it's not about information overload. As one of my favorite thoughts is that actually high information load is very relaxing. Nature is one of the most informative things you could be in. There's more information at more horizons and more variety when you walk into the woods than there is almost anywhere. That's why it's so relaxing. So your mind actually loves information. If information overload, I say, if too much information was the problem, you walk into a library and explode. That doesn't happen. The problem is, and I call it potential meaning overload. See, you walk into nature, bears and berries and bugs, once you're a little familiar with nature, become somewhat self-evident, and you kind of navigate with those things that may have meaning amidst all that.
Yeah.
The problem is the internet, especially when it delivers and throws you 300 to 500 emails a day. Each one of those emails is a potential bear, berry, or bug, but you don't know that. You actually have to open it up, make a decision, look at it, integrate what that means. It's not self-evident. So what happens is now this huge bandwidth that's been given to everybody has allowed a lot more data coming across that has potential meaning.
Yes.
See, if you looked at all your emails and said, trash, that's from mom, and I know what to do with that. That's from my boss, and I know what to do with those. If those were already defined, to be tough enough. But there's a subliminal part of us that knows those are still decisions I need to make.
Yeah.
And as much as I may not want to answer my mom's email, I gotta, and what we do is then we add it to the pile.
The
It's like you pick it up and you go, and you put it over here. Well, it didn't go away. The problem is that, again, why I think GTD has hit such a nerve is because what it's training us all is very rapidly making those kinds of operational decisions when things are coming at you, so you don't let it lie there still with meaning unclear.
Yeah.
So you need to make meaning very clear when it's on you. See, successful executives, the successful executive behavior is sort of Teflon, like nothing sticks, right? They just walk around integrating information, making decisions, dispatching the results of that thinking into trusted peoples and systems, and then they walk on. I mean, who is that masked man, right?
Yeah.
No ripple in that water, no residue. Why was there no residue? It's not a machinery, it's not a list manager, it's not the new iPhone that's going to get that clear. There's an executive decision that has to be made about that input. So training yourself, what is the decision I need to make? Training yourself to then make that decision when it shows up instead of when it blows up, and then park that stuff into trusted systems, is the change in behavior set that really this represents. But again, it's not so much, well, change has always been a stressor.
Yeah.
Now, even good change. It's like I'm going to have to undo and redo based upon and recalibrate and integrate this new stuff. It's just that you and me in the last 72 hours have gotten more change producing and project creating and priority shifting information than our parents got in a month, some of them in a year.
Yes.
So the problem is, if the new thing comes in, that now represents a new project. But first of all, you got to define that's now a project, and secondly, you better have the inventory of all the other projects you've committed to be able to then hold that up against, because you're going to have to drop one off. You got a new one, you better drop one off.
And that's where I'm at right now, is how do you say no?
Oh,
because you have so many people asking for your input, for your feedback, you have to start learning to say no at some level.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise you just fall apart.
And one of the tricks about learning to say no is, if you spend as many years as I have keeping track of what I call projects, and anything that's more than one step that you can finish within a few days or weeks, you know, if you keep track of that, and most people have between 30 and 100 of those, if you literally keep that and watch it regularly, at least once a week, you're looking at that whole inventory: get tires on my car, hire an assistant, restructure my department, you know, handle the next vacation with my spouse. All of those things, if you looked at those as often as I do and get that whole inventory, that word NO comes a little easier.
Yeah.
The problem is, if you don't know how much you've committed to, you will overcommit like crazy because your self-regulating mechanism is out of whack internally.
Yeah.
You have no feedback mechanism about what you've committed to. So some part of you says, well, out of my integrity, I might, could, would, should be able to do it. Sure, give it to me. Sure, give it to me. Good example of that. A lot of people have reading.
I'm totally just, I'm going, yep.
But come on, a lot of people, a good example, a lot of people have reading. You know, if you got a bunch of stuff around your life that you told yourself, I should read, and it's kind of out of control, spread all over God and creation.
Totally.
Right. All you got to do, if you wanted to get control, get yourself a big box and say, read and review. But literally, don't miss anything. Go through your whole environment, take every book, every article, every printout, every whatever that you're still telling yourself you want to read, put it in one box. One big pile, right? At that point, you're going to want to take me to lunch. You're going to go, wow, all right, there's all my read. I got this under control, right? The problem is then, okay, now which of those should you be reading? You're probably still getting magazines from hobbies that turned you on 2 years ago, but you haven't been inspired by those for a year and a half, but the magazine's still coming.
Yeah.
Right? So which one of those are you going to get rid of? That's the sort of perspective piece of this game that says, okay, now let's make some choices. Let's decide what not to read out of that pile. But if I started out with the conversation, Robert, let's talk about what you shouldn't be reading right now, I'm just going to be talking to a zombie, essentially, because you haven't got it all under control. In other words, once you get this much more conscious, then I'm not saying that's an easy decision, but it becomes a possible decision.
Yeah. Give our audience 3 things that they can do to get started.
Keep everything out of your head. Overwrite. Write it all down.
What are some of the things that people put in their head that shouldn't be in their head?
Everything you say that should be different. Anything you consider incomplete. Now, I don't write down everything in my head. I'm not writing down everything we're talking about right now because, you know, we're just having fun. I'm just grazing. Yeah. But if I suddenly said, oh yeah, Robert, I'll get back to you about that, that's where I'm going to grab out my little David Allen note-taker wallet, and I'm going to open to a page and write that down, because these, as you can see, the last few hours, I got stuff on here. I have no idea what this is. Yeah. But these are potential things I might want to do something about that I couldn't finish when I thought of them. That's what you need to make sure you capture. And that's big things, little things, personal, professional, doesn't matter. Get all of those, because the psyche doesn't know the difference, doesn't make those distinctions. It just says, hey, something that's not the way you exactly want it to be. So I need to grab those. So those are the kind of things people need to grab.
Now, let's keep that out, because we're going to talk about tools.
Sure.
Productivity porn, I think you called it. Tell me what productivity porn is.
Well, productivity porn is, somebody else made up the term. I didn't. I heard it and I said, you know, it kind of is like that. It's like, okay, what's the newest, latest gear? You know, how many ways can I manage a list of my phone calls? There are over 100 software applications that purport to support the GTD.
And we were talking about the new iPhone. You don't have the new iPhone yet.
I don't have the new iPhone.
There's like dozens of apps that are using your system on that.
I know. I think that's
and it's
really
only 4 days old, right?
But, well, and I understand. It's like, look, we need a good list manager. Absolutely. But you can manage lists on a piece of paper. Pieces of paper. I mean, paper lists in a loose leaf notebook are probably the easiest to use and the most powerful way to manage a list.
Actually, I'll tell you about my favorite app, my favorite productivity porn. It's really cool. It's called Evernote. And you can either talk to it, you can write on it, you can type on it if you have a BlackBerry or something like that, or you can take a picture of something. And a lot of times it's the receipt that reminds you, that is putting stuff in your...
Oh no, that's fabulous.
And it turns the text in the image into text that you can search for later.
Oh
so,
my.
so if you want to find that receipt from when you went to Disneyland, you have to do something with that, you can just search Disneyland and it'll take you right to that receipt.
Well, here's the problem though, and if you've got this one nailed, I'll have to hand it to you. The problem is stage 2. Now you've got a great collector, right?
Yes.
That's really fun to use and it's high tech and it's cool gear, right? How often is all that cleaned up to zero? Where is all the stuff that you've then got pictures of or whatever? See, there's the
I'm
problem.
going to hide under the table.
That's why it takes 2 years to really get the GTD model. I mean, that sounds absurd, and you get value immediately. If you just start writing things down, you'll get value immediately. Start deciding next actions on just a few more things than you normally would, you're going to experience a huge increase in productivity and a relaxation, show up. But to change that behavior so that, yes, now you've got the collection habit, great. I just coached an executive not too long ago who he caught the collection habit. He was so excited, man. And as a matter of fact, in his board meetings, he had Post-its all over the place, and he had Post-its stuck all over the table because he was collecting everything. The problem was he now had a drawer full of Post-its, right? That all that stuff really crawls back up in your head if you don't move it through the process and go, okay, now what the heck am I going to do with that? What's the next step?
Yeah.
So yes. Collection, first of all, you've got to collect that stuff, and then the second key is you have to then not let that stuff lie fallow very long.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, every 24 to 48 hours, everything that has been collecting all your stuff should be zeroed out.
Every 24 hours.
48, 72 if you're on a real roll, but then now you're starting to do emergency scanning. See, the problem is most people watching this are their professional life is emergency scanning mode.
And we all know who you are.
Right.
6,000.
It's called, let me just check and see if there'll be anything that'll blow up, and you still leave the stuff there. As opposed to the dumb, dorky stuff is the fastest things you should get out of there. You need to make good decisions about what of the stuff still has meaning for you and then park those things appropriately. It doesn't mean you finish all the stuff to be finished in there. It means you make a clear decision about what it means and then get it out of that collection tool and put it into appropriate places where they belong.
Now, what do you do with a person who has thousands of inbox emails? How do you get them onto the system and get it cleaned out? Is it brute force? Do they have to take a week off their life and just answer email for a week? Or do they just delete it all and
some people just push the button. They just do Control-A, delete. It's like, okay.
Email bankruptcy, we call it,
That's
right?
it. It's a bit of a crapshoot, and I don't recommend that. Sometimes the best way to do that is to actually create an archive folder that's dated, called, okay, here's all the emails between these 2 dates, and then clean up your in-basket so that you're then dealing with the new stuff in an appropriately best practice manner, and then just chip away at the old stuff. You probably do need to do a quick scan to make sure there are no landmines that'll blow up on you in there. But sometimes what you need to do is, once you understand this process, is just corral the backlog and then make that a project to chip away at it.
Now you have a new book coming out.
A new book coming out, yes.
Hey, what is it?
It's called Making It All Work, Winning at the Game of Work and the Business of Life.
And when does it come out?
December 29th, it'll be in the bookstores.
Okay.
You can pre-order. It's on Amazon or our site.
Give me a taste of what's in that book. Why should a Getting Things Done person buy that book?
First of all, a lot of it is the principles underneath the principles. It took me, 7 years since Getting Things Done came out. And people said, gee, David, what's next? And I say, well, just read Getting Things Done again until you sort of get it. Because there's nothing I would change that's in there. It's really a very tactical, precise manual and still highly useful in that regard. But the whole idea, for instance, of what are the principles underneath the whole idea of getting this stuff out of your mind, and can that apply to dealing with your kids and dealing with departments and dealing with whole cultures? Now we've had a lot of experience and thousands of people who've started to apply this model. One of the things I've done is mature my own understanding of why these things work so powerfully, and therefore there's a more universal application of these principles that one could make. So that's a lot of what the new book is about. And I've already mentioned it, actually, just understanding that the 2 real issues are control and perspective, and those actually have 2 different sets of behaviors to work on them. They're very closely intertwined, because if you're out of control, it's hard to have perspective, and if you don't have the right perspective, you keep losing control. But they're actually very different things. So the 5 stages of how you get control anywhere. If you're feeling out of control in a department or in a conversation with your kids or just having people over for dinner, There's actually, if you can walk yourself through these stages, first of all, I get the stuff that's got my attention about the people coming over for dinner. I then need to clarify, okay, here's what that means, and here's what we're going to cook, and here's the important stuff. I then need to organize the ingredients and all the appropriate things. I need to back off and keep looking at the various horizons of the dinner and the time and all these factors, and then I make choices about what to do. Well, that's actually how you get control of anything, but it's not one thing, it's 5. And understanding those principles, those 5 steps, that's a lot of what the book is about, is expanding on that so that people don't feel like this is some tight little model I have to go do or not do. So wait a minute, each one of those things is a very powerful principle about how we can behave in a more of a controlled situation. And then the other part is the perspective. What are the 6 horizons that you actually have commitments about? And expanding on how to apply those, both for teams and cultures and families and so forth.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the David Allen Company. What are you trying to do with your company?
We're out of control and have no focus. Well, we're a fast company. I mean, we're growing pretty fast. We've sort of doubled on the line, I think, in the last 12 months or so. I hired a CEO, Patrick Smith, great guy, because I fired myself. I'm now chairman and chief visionary and evangelist. And,
that's what we always do.
Yeah, I was in the way, because that's not my shtick. Pat does that very well, and he's managed companies that have gone from sort of the mom-pop stage, like me and Catherine sort of running our own show, and then graduating this up to a next level. And the world is just banging on our door, to bring this and to find what are the models to bring this into, for instance, corporate cultures. We're doing a lot of that work now. So we have about 50 people in the company.
Yeah, and in the after-show party, we'll talk about some of your travels. You've been all over the world and had some interesting experiences in Japan and
oh yeah, well there's a GTD crowd. I was just in Poland. There's one in Tokyo. I was just there with all the business bloggers in Tokyo, and yeah, it's fascinating.
What are you doing with your? I keep hearing these rumors of a conference coming up.
Yes. Oh yes, we decided simply because there is this world global phenomenon of GTD that we would just sort of build it and they'll come. So we've now booked right here in San Francisco the Intercontinental next March 13 through 15 for the GTD Global Summit. So we're going to have people, already people have been, as soon as they heard about it, the people have been signing up because we've got a lot of people from the UK, for instance, big organization there that's been implementing this that want to show up and share their best practices, and talk to a lot of other CLOs and the people that are trying to work this stuff in the military and some of the big corporations. So that's a whole segment. Certainly a lot of the bloggers and tech people who want to kind of find each other and find out what's this common denominator, as well as people interested in how do we get this into schools. So I think there's a lot of different conversations, so we wanted to just create an event for that. So the GTD Global Summit next March.
In a couple minutes that we have left, how do you know somebody gets it? Somebody is really on board, and is that Ferrari that's really taking off? What kinds of behaviors do you sense?
It's very simple. If they at all feel out of control or feel like they have not got the right focus, they know exactly how to get back to it by themselves.
Interesting.
That's how I got a black belt. My sensei, when that was the criterion for getting a black belt in karate, was if you could train yourself. Doesn't have to mean you're always in shape, but if you know how to get yourself back in shape because you know the game and you know how to put yourself into the game when required, that's it. So if you're feeling out of control in any situation and you know how to get that control, or you're feeling like I don't have the right focus right now and I need to get the right focus, if you know how to do both of those, you're on.
Yeah. Does your system help you manage attention? Because like one of my life goals is to have an interesting conversation every day, and that's how I manage my life. And every day I have an interesting conversation, so my life is great.
That's right,
but
absolutely.
The rest of my life is all hell.
Well, one at a time, Robert. Now, what's next? Yeah. Well, it's about both attention and intention, both of those things. So you can put your attention where you want it, or your attention is being grabbed or distracted by something. So if you think about that, we say, well, those are the two aspects of it. How do I put my focus where I want it? That is, I want to put my attention on this in the appropriate way. I need to put the right attention on these notes at the right time. I need to have my attention on certain things, which is going to allow me to know what these mean to me. So attention is a very, very critical piece, and that's my intention, is to do this, that, or the other. But I have to say, look, what's getting in the way of my intention or my conscious attention? And most all, that's the distraction of my attention because of things that have not been handled or managed well.
Very cool. Well, this has been a real pleasure. So thank you for
as
coming
always,
on my show.
Sure.
We're going to have an after-show party on kite.tv/Scobleizer, and we'll be taking your taking questions from the people
fun.
who are watching this live. That's why we do this live.
Cool.
Next week's guest is Buzz Bregeman, CEO of ActiveWords and a friend of both of ours.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's going to show us mind mapping and a bunch of other tools that help him manage his life. Please join us for the, please join us for the after show party on kite.tv. And man, it's been a great time. I wish I had like 5 hours with David. In fact, you can buy, you can come on your seminars, right? You have seminars, which I did a whole day with you. That was really great.
Public seminars, yeah. Our website's got all that stuff.
So I want to thank you for joining us, and now get back to work.